This is Mike White with TigerTV, and today we have a special guest with us. He has actually been the play-by-play announcer for Haywood football for 36 years, and this year is our 99th year in the Ripley Tiny Knee Stadium, and we're getting a new stadium, and so otherwise known as Dr. Robert Rooks. He is also the grandson of Tiny Knee. So we wanted to get some information to him about Tiny Knee and about the stadium as he remembers back through the years as we are building a new stadium this year. So we thought it would be a great time to go ahead and get some background information and get the history of Tiny Knee Stadium. Again, this is Robert Rooks. He is the grandson of Tiny Knee Stadium from Brownsville, Tennessee. And Robert, thanks for being with us today.
Well, it's mighty special, and I appreciate the opportunity to share with you. And you and I have known each other a little while, and to get the opportunity to tell everybody how great a person and you think about it, Tiny Knee, that's a Tiny Knee. That's a strange name. I could just see these people riding down Highway 51 through all these years, and they look over there and said, wonder what that is, this Tiny Knee. Well, let's start there, and it's not a question you asked me, but the fellow we're talking about was my grandfather, born in 1899. His name, and a lot of people might know, was Irvin, I-R-V-I-N, Irvin Knee. And Knee is a little different name. That's the only time I've ever seen that name. But growing up, and he was never a very tall fellow. So being short, even though he was athletically inclined, he was about 5'9". He just developed the name Tiny and went with it all his years. More people knew him he knew that name, and other people did more than Irvin. And if I'm Irvin, I'm going to change it to Tiny too. But anyway, Irvin Knee was my grandfather, and that stadium, and we'll get to that as we move along. The stadium was named for him, and our whole family through the years, both sides, my mom and my dad's family, I love to have family names, and I'm proud of, and why wouldn't you be, of being a grandson or a relative of Tiny Knee.
Absolutely.
What a great person he was. We know about maybe his coaching ability, his athletic ability, but Tiny Knee was just as genuine a fellow that loved people, loved children, and wanted to make the world a better place. That's who Tiny Knee was, and that's what I want to get across as we talk today, is unraveling the mystery of who this guy was, where did he come from, what did he mean, what did he do. How many people have a street name for him? Now, it's a small, short street. There's Knee Street. The field is Tiny Knee Field, Tiny Knee Stadium. In 1945, just right across where the current high school is now, they had the Tiny Knee Shack Club.
I remember that.
And they called it shortened it to TKS. About the time my mom was in high school, my mother went to Ripley High School. She was a basketball player. And he wanted something for the youth. He had a favorite heart a place in his heart for the young people and the youth of Ripley and Lauderdale County. It didn't make him just what color skin you had. He loved people, and he'd go down to Lauderdale Park and with their swimming pool and help the black children and whatever they needed, and he'd go to the other swimming pool next to where the school is today. And I love going, Mike, because in the summertime I get to go. Well, if you're Tiny Knee's grandson, well, you get to swim. You don't have to pay anything. I'd get me a zero candy bar and an orange crush, and I had it made, and I just tell them, put that on Tiny Knee's. But it is funny. All the coaches I knew about, even over here in Brownsville, but the coaches would always seem to run the swimming pool. All these little towns, I'm sure Milan and Trenton and Humboldt and Covington, the head coaches. But Tiny Knee coached, but he did a lot of things besides that in Ripley.
Well, we're going to kind of try to follow a little bit of an outline so we can make sure we ask some pertinent questions. And I did want to ask you, what was and you may have already answered this to a certain degree, what your grandfather, what Tiny Knee was like away from football.
Yeah, he was just a good guy. You're right, Mike. Away from athletics, that's what I knew him. Growing up, he was my grandfather. So I could see him, he liked to grill, and he would cook the meats at the house, and my grandmother would do the inside dishes, the vegetables and the casseroles. But I can see him now. He had a pit grill back there made out of some brick, and he'd do some ribs or barbecue chicken, and he loved doing all that. Now I've got a funny story too. What he taught in high school were all the science classes. Well,
Which is unusual nowadays for a coach to.
That's right. Coach is trying to get out of teaching. Well, Tiny Nee was teaching physics and chemistry, general science. He did that side of the ledger. And my grandmother, Willard Henson Nee, she was from Louisville, Mississippi, she taught English. Well, anyway, Tiny Nee, knowing a little bit about the sciences, well, I remember back in the 60s, he had of course, he died in 68, so somewhere previous to that, probably around 1960, he had a bunch of dogs that would come over and turn over his wastebasket. Well, okay, he said, well, we're going to solve this. And the garbage cans were further away from the house, but they just would continually turn over the cans and make mess and this and that. So he hooked it up to some electricity, had those cans wired, and so he could hear them yelping. When he said it didn't take but one or two times. And he was an animal lover, don't get me wrong. He wasn't trying to, and he didn't injure the dogs.
But he just broke them.
He broke them from turning over the trash cans. But Tiny D was just a great person that people ought to know that he loved people and wanted to do for the town. And to me, he was the #1 ambassador of Ripley. Didn't grow up there. He didn't come. He was 28 years old when he came to Ripley, and he locked in and never left.
Well, I actually wanted to just do a brief synopsis of, I know where he went to high school and where he went to college and how he ended up down here, but everybody doesn't know that. Just kind of a brief synopsis of how he got to Ripley and what all he did before he got there.
Right. He's an Indiana guy, which is a pretty foreign place to come from to end up in West Tennessee. But he started out in a little bitty town, Wabash, Indiana. Then he went, his family moved over closer to Crawfordsville, Indiana, is actually where Wabash College was. Well, he shined as a football player, basketball player, track star in the high school. Well, you can do that, and a lot of athletes are good players in high school. Well, he went to Wabash College. Basketball didn't really play a big role there, but track did and football did, and he set some state records. He was the 100-yard dash champion at Wabash College, and that was the Indiana state record, and the 220. He won both those races. He made all-state in football, and that was against some of the Four Horsemen of Notre Dame and those things. Matter of fact, of the Four Horsemen, one guy made the all-state team with Tiny Nee. The other three weren't good enough to make the team. And I've got a clipping at home that said no team would be the same without Nee.
Yeah, no all-state team would be complete.
Would be complete without Tiny Nee. So anyway, he set his own mark there. Had an opportunity to come to Cumberland College, today Cumberland University, in Lebanon, Tennessee. Well, that's where he met my grandmother, and they ended up marrying. But he went there in 1922, and during those days, and he came there as a coach. Well, you could actually play and coach, and he did some of both. He played even there at Cumberland, even though he'd finished up his college days at Wabash. But T.W. Griffiths out of Ripley needed somebody to come and help start the football program.
Was he the superintendent?
I think that's right.
Okay.
And they had football sporadically before 1926, 1927, but evidently didn't have much of a playing field. So somehow the fellow in Ripley found out about this Nee fellow in Cumberland and said, would you like to come to Ripley and help build a football field and start a football program? And Tiny Nee said yes. So they moved down. My mother was born in 1928. He'd been there 1 year. I think Tiny Nee came in the spring of 27, and the first thing he did was build a field. Well, how difficult was that? Well, there weren't any gasoline-powered tractors and bulldozers. You had mules and some little type of slip. get what they call the type of, and then the football players that were eager enough to play football would help and fill in. Now later on, when my day came along, he'd even go to Fort Pillow and bring in a lot of the. I'd be scared that they'd be these what I call convicts out there, and but they did the work and really grooved that field. And I'm excited today. They're keeping the field there in the fall of 2026, to be, and next year will be a 100-year anniversary. And it's Tiny Knee Field. It's Tiny Knee Stadium. It's Jim Fitzhugh Field. And the press box is named for
Don Paris.
Don Paris, the longtime radio personality there in Ripley. But Tiny Knee came in 27 and worked to build that field. It took several years to do a completion. Pretty neat setting in the little bowl shape. Now they've done away with that now.
Now, what a lot of people don't realize, and I've seen a few pictures, is the area where the football field, actually the school and all, that was just a big gully at the time.
Yeah.
My understanding from pictures I remember. And I think I remember you telling me that they used mules and pond scoops. And,
yeah.
And of course, he was a big track guy also, maybe even more so than football. And you had told me about him and how many boxcar loads of cinder they unloaded over a short period of time, and that they used all the cinder from all the furnaces in the schools to help. Just elaborate on that just a little bit.
Well, and you kind of told it, but you're right. If you're going to list the sports, Tiny Knee was a sports guy, but he didn't bang his chest. He was good at a lot of things he did. Ripley would know about him just through his coaching days, but he was a world or state class athlete in high school and college. But his number one love was track. And when he came in there, he built one of the, I think outside of Shelby County, the first cindered track in West Tennessee. And you're right, he went to the school. Wherever he could get cinders back in that day, that's all you had. So he'd haul in boxcar loads of cinders, and when he couldn't get those, he would go to the school furnace and get whatever cinders were there and spread that track. And when Tiny Knee, he ran the Ripley relays. When he had those, Ripley was going to win it. They always amazed me. Of course, he had runners, yes. How they did the pole vault, I don't know. And that wasn't his specialty. He was a speed demon. Tiny Knee could run the short races. But you had Benji Beard in 1962 that won the 880 run in the state of Tennessee. Or could have been mile run, but he was a state champion. But when I think about, you ask maybe what players and contestants with him would always come back. He had a special love for his track guys, and his track guys loved Tiny Knee. But he would win. Matter of fact, in 1930, Ripley won the state track meet and came in second in 1931. I mean, in the early days, he had some good athletes, but he could coach them. And Ripley was solid in track, but that's his first love. And he even coached some basketball. I thought mostly girls, but sometimes some boys. He coached my mom in 1945. There she is playing, and Tiny Knee's the Ripley head basketball coach. But football, I know him from more. He'd finished his varsity coaching days. He coached for 23 years from 1927 to 1949. When I came along, he'd quit coaching the varsity football, started coaching the freshmen. And I've got a film that shows Tiny Knee. He's the coach in 1965, coaching the Ripley Tigers, the freshman team. And I'm playing over here, and we squeaked out a win right over here in Brownsville. And I'll tell you something about that field too, Mike. I hadn't thought about this. It probably would have been when I was like 12 years old, 1962. I'm born in 1950. So in 62, during the varsity games, and I got over there because my when you're the grandson of Tiny Knee, you can get by with a lot of stuff, you
Absolutely.
know. I probably could have taken stuff home with me, I didn't do it. But at halftime, they called them the top waters. And I was on one of them's team. It was just like ants out there, but you were 10 or 12 years old, and they would have them dressed up, I guess maybe purple and white, and we just kind of do around. And I was on the field. The first time I ever played on that field, I was 10 or 12 years old as a topwater.
Wow.
And when I'm growing up, I was so much over there with my grandfather at the swimming pool, and he had that marvelous Jeep that we'd ride around in. I thought, when I grow up, I want to be a Ripley football player. Well, it ended up I'm over here in Brownsville, and that was an arch rival. Ripley Brownsville was a big rivalry, and but anyway.
So did Ripley Relays, did they start about the same time as the football program in 27, or would it have been a year or two later?
The track team there started in the early 30s, 29 or 30. The relays now, Mike, I'm not sure. I would think that was more, because you had to have other teams that had tracks, and just not many people had track teams or tracks. Just like, well, Brownsville, we did not, this is ridiculous, we did not have a track till 1965.
Wow.
So what did Charles Crispus over here, that was a 880 state champion, he had to go to Ripley to run and practice on their track to compete in meets. So my guess is, I don't have a start date for the Ripley Relays, but it wouldn't have been much ahead of 1960 probably, but somewhere in the 50s. But in the 30s, no, he would have a track team. Tiny Knee would groom them to beat teams in Memphis and Jackson and Middle Tennessee. But the relays came about later.
Well, that's one of the things I'm really happy about with the new stadium is the new track, and being able to hopefully start back Ripley Relays, because even when I was in school in the 70s, it was the biggest track meet around.
Yeah.
And, because it was centrally located. You had everybody from Memphis, from Union City to Jackson.
Yeah.
It was just a huge track meet.
Yeah, that's right. It'd be great.
All right, let me move on down the list here. What, or did you know that he was a legend at Ripley at the time when he was there before he passed away?
See, no. And I talked to you. Here's somebody that's my grandfather. Well, what are we doing? Well, we eating fried chicken, riding in the Jeep, swimming. I don't think to ask him about his playing days or his coaching days, and didn't pay attention to what his records were. When he was coaching, though, Mike, in that 23 years, he won the West Tennessee championship. Two of those. Now, those were early years where they had the Ammons boys and the Thompson boys. He had some great athletes. But no, I knew him as a great grandfather. He loved us grandchildren. I tell you what he did, too. In 1962, I woke up that Christmas morning, and what is outside revved up for us to get in. It was cold. Luckily, there wasn't any snow. And he could do these kind of things. He built a miniature Jeep, just like he had, with a little lawnmower motor in the back. It would go 8 to 10 miles an hour, two-seater, made out of wood with the motor in the back. We ran the wheels off that thing. I was so excited. But my grandfather, he didn't buy it. He made it.
Built it.
He built it, and that was in our yard. The Christmas morning of '62, my sister and I rode that forever. But no, Tiny Knee, I don't know what he thought, but I'm going to tell you, he's top of the heap in athletic ability. And even when he came to Ripley, he played on a semi-pro team out of Memphis. They played the Green Bay Packers and Chicago Bears. Clarence Saunders, that had the Pink Palace, had enough money to form a team. Well, Tiny Knee said, sign me up. And he would 28 years old, came to Ripley. He's playing semi-pro ball.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was a Cadillac, but he could fly with his size, and I don't know, he weighed 190 probably. Wow. Back in those days, 185, 190. And could fly, was 5'9", wasn't tall, but he could fly. See, when you can win the Indiana State track meet in the 100-yard dash, you gone.
It's not the long legs.
No.
It's how quick you pick them up and put them down. Well, on the original stadium, and I know this may or may not be a question that you would know unless you just heard it. Did he actually design the stadium, or I know he supervised it because he actually worked in it, but did he? I guess he designed it too.
Pretty much what you're saying. That's what I know. He came in there and they just turned it over to him. These people didn't know. Well, Tiny Knee'd been around the sport, so yeah, I think he just figured out what we do and how we do it and got it done. Yeah.
Do you remember when the stadium was named Tiny Knee Stadium?
No, and see, if I'm reading this right now, two things going on there. In 1937, that's 13 years before I'm born. I think they actually put a name on it in 37. But what I relate to is in 1958. Now, I'm just 8 years old, but I was at the game. I'd go to all these games. I mean, my dad was a big football. Now, it may be when Ripley played Brownsville, we wouldn't go to all the Ripley games, but we would go over there because my dad played for Brownsville, and this was pretty odd. Later on, of course, he ends up marrying Tiny Knee's daughter. But in 1941, my dad's on an undefeated football team over here. They were pretty good. My dad played on that team. We played Ripley, and Brownsville beat Ripley 65-0.
Wow.
I mean, Tiny Knee's the coach. I'm sure they got a laugh talking about that later. But anyway, Haywood had a much better team that year. But anyway, what was you?
Well, just did you know about when they named the stadium?
What I want to relate to is this. In 1958, and this is when they dedicate, they've got a granite marker at the north end of the field. They dedicated this field to Tiny Knee then. Now, I think it was already prior to 58 named Tiny Knee, but they put a marker at the north end.
That.
And I called Randy White the other day. I said, I hope they didn't destroy this.
They didn't. They moved it.
And I hope also that the arch coming off of Highway 51, it says Tiny Knee Stadium.
Irvin,
Tiny Knee. Hope that's still safe. But here's what that granite marker said, and whoever composed this nailed it. They said it the right way. Irvin Knee, called tiny, but great in his vision and in his labor in the building of this field and in the building of men. Now, underline that. When you ask me about Tiny Knee, that's what he did. He built character. He built pride. He built men. He played teamwork, play it the right way, win, but play it the right way. That's Tiny Knee. If you want a picture of, you look up in the dictionary what a great coach and a person ought to be, that's Tiny Knee. That's Tiny Knee.
I remember actually when we played our last game there last year before they started the renovation, I actually took a picture right there beside that with the stadium in the background, and I'm in hopes that they're going to put that back. I can't imagine that they wouldn't. Your grandfather seemed to care a lot more than just football. What was his overall vision for the young people in Ripley?
What was his overall
vision?
Well, to be good, be good people.
I can,
don't hush your mouth. Don't behave. But he did. I never saw him lose his temper. I never saw him.
Not even coaching.
No, he didn't mistreat me. He wasn't going to mistreat anybody, and he wasn't going to let anybody else mistreat other people. But he was just a great person. I can't imagine. There are people, Mike, we see and know, not me, maybe you, that there's never a bad word said about him. I mean, Tiny Knee was one of those people, you couldn't find a bad thing to say about Tiny Knee. But he was the same person off the field as he was on the field. But what would he say to the young people? He'd say, let's just do it the right way, Right.
Well, let me ask you, how would you describe his coaching style?
Well, and he's coaching again before my day and time. I will say this. In researching for the book I wrote about football in 1948, and he's only going to coach the varsity football one more year. In 1948, and I've told you, Brownsville-Ripley was a big rivalry. Well, if I'm coaching either squad, if I'm doing this and I get beat, I don't feel too good about anything. Brownsville went to Ripley in 1948 and beat Ripley 13-6. Tiny Knee, the opposing coach, went to the Brownsville dressing room and congratulated Brownsville for winning the game. I cannot imagine. That doesn't happen today that I know of, and I don't think it happened many times then. That'll tell you a whole lot about what you need to know about Tiny Knee. He left a losing locker room by one touchdown, one of his biggest rivals. He said, I want to tell you guys, you played a great game.
Wow. That is unusual. You don't hear much of that. And I know that you said that he continued to stay in contact with some of his former athletes, some of his football players, track athletes, and things like that. So he evidently had a lasting impact on a lot of these young men.
He did, and even Mike, and I think about the guys he coached, especially in track, but in football. But I would have known some later on because they were more my age. But Randy White stands in my mind. Behind us here is a photograph of Tiny Nee in his later years. And in 1987, he'd already been dead for 18 years then, but he was inducted in the TSSAA Hall of Fame. My family, of course, goes. Who went to that ceremony from Ripley? Randy White.
Wow.
Yeah. Tiny Nee didn't coach Randy White.
Right.
He quit years later. I don't know if Maurice Kelly was coaching or if it would have been
It would have coached when?
Coach Walker or
Coach.
but I don't know.
It would have been Coach Kelly that coached Randy White.
Would have been Coach Kelly.
Definitely.
Because Kelly was there on up through 74 or something. But anyway, Randy White was nice. And I tell you what else Randy did about a year ago. He told me they were dismantling a lot of the park north of the field. And if you look back in the day, they had water fountains, and it was part of the Tiny Nee Shack Club, but it was just a park for the children. And he went over there before they started tearing down and cutting trees. He brought me a pine cone, and I've got it up front here at my office.
Yeah, I remember you telling me
and I
that.
put a note in there what this represented. But he brought, because Tiny Nee planted those pine trees, and Randy said, "I want you to have a pine cone from that." So yeah, there are other but Randy White stands out in my mind as being so considerate. He knew Tiny Nee, but Tiny Nee never actually coached Randy.
Well, speaking of that, are there any former player stories that stand out to you that you've heard them tell about your granddad?
Well, no, but before I leave, I'll tell you this one. As kids growing up, today nobody knows how to drive a stick shift, that type of, everything's automatic now anyway. But when I'm learning how to drive, when I'm 16, 17 years old, and I think everybody ought to learn how. Tiny Nee, my grandfather got me in his Jeep, which was a 4 or 5 Willis Jeep. We got in the outfield of the baseball field, and he just settled in there. How come I didn't throw him out of there? I don't know, because I was doing this and that. But I learned how to drive a stick shift transmission in a Willis Jeep that was his.
On the baseball field.
On the baseball field in Ripley. And I'm sure we rutted it up pretty good, but I learned how to do it. I sure did.
So let me ask you, how important was football to the community back then? Because it was new and they haven't really had a sustained team. What's your feeling, I guess, from what you got, how important it may have been back in the day when you first started the program? Yeah,
it had to be great and rallied around when you win. See, shortly after he got there, they didn't just play football. He went 9-0 in 1931. Well, you do that, the town's going to be there. And what's interesting enough, too, Tiny Nee in 1940 was one of 3 men that saw the need for a special conference. And he and R.K. Castellaw from Covington and George Tyree from Somerville started what we knew back then as the Big Ten Conference. Today, people don't know what a conference is. Well, from 1940 to 1969, teams in West Tennessee were in this conference, which was the biggest, baddest conference in the
Absolutely.
state. You could be in Nashville or Knoxville, and you look down there, and they knew what the Big Ten Conference meant. So Tiny Nee started that conference and was instrumental when he got out of head coaching the varsity and started coaching the freshmen. He started the freshman league. They call it the Jefferson Davis League, Jeff Davis League. And the smaller schools in West Tennessee that had freshman teams played each other. And Tiny Nee started that.
Well, let me ask you, and I know this would be just from hearsay, but I'm guessing that the Tiny Nee Stadium, of course, it's a special place now, and there's a lot of people, and I know one guy from Haywood that was posted a picture. TigerTV had posted a picture of the old stadium, and I think Rodney, I can't remember his last name, he still coaches. He said, "Man, I love to go in Tiny Stadium." And he said we had some battles down there.
Yeah, yeah. I think about it too. And on the west side, the stands just cut into the bank. And of course, you could pull your cars up. On the north end,
Yeah.
a lot of times if it was cold, you just set your cars up there and you
Absolutely.
could watch the game.
And still all the way up through last year.
Yeah. Just, I mean, yeah, it's a special place. And I tell you too, another thought too. When my grandfather died in October of 1968, I'm a senior in high school, and that was the first monumental funeral, closest relative of any sort that had died, and I had to go through that, and that was pretty tough. I didn't realize what all that, going through the visitation so what they did, Mike, and I thought that was really cool, but it was emotional for me. We got in the cars and left. I think it was Garner Funeral Home at the time, and the cascade of cars, the funeral procession, wound their way through Knee Street and Tiny Town and the Tiny Knee Shack Club through the trees, and I thought, boy.
Yeah.
That was just.
Yeah, I was just in the 5th grade, and I remember what a big deal it was.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a hypothetical question. What do you think Tiny Knee would think when he walks into this new stadium if he were alive today, and his name was still on it?
It'd be kind of like Gomer Pyle. Golly, it's like I can't believe it. I don't deserve it. I wanted to do it. Y'all preserved it. And he would brag on others. He said, "Y'all made it better than I left it." But yeah, because he sure didn't want his picture taken, his name mentioned. He wanted something Ripley could be proud
about the kids.
Yeah, he did. Boy, I'm telling you, I never seen. He'd be riding that Jeep, and if you slowed down, many a time he and I'd be doing something. Well, I wasn't in the Jeep. I'm trying to get in the back. He's gone. Now I'm hanging on, but my picture of him was that Jeep loaded with kids.
Yeah, that was a pretty regular sight.
In the swimming pool, everything related to children. Adults, he played around with them some, but he loved it. I can see R.L. Ammons doing stuff with him, but he would just get things done, and I just see a flock of children around him. Yeah.
Yeah, well, he always attracted them. And I think you probably mentioned this, but what do you hope that people remember about Tiny Knee?
Well, I hope they learn that he was just such a great person deep down. Here's a thought I hadn't mentioned yet either. Tiny Knee didn't care if he had a nickel in his pocket or $500. Now, he never had $500 in his pocket, but and if he had any money in his pocket, he'd give it to you. But wealth was just, like you say, the children and the work I'm doing. I'm getting appreciated enough. Y'all don't have to tell me that. You don't have to pay me for doing this. And there's no telling I don't know what he was supposed to have gotten paid for. Okay, you coached and you taught. Okay, you give me a check. He delivered the commercial appeal. Okay, but all this other stuff he did, what did he do? Everything. Anything. I remember Joey Mason, Bobby Mason's son.
I remember.
Lightning hit the house and knocked the TV out. And Joey loved and knew, and he was just, I bet he wasn't 6 years old. And Bobby Mason said, "I don't know what we're going to do now." And Joey said, "Call Mr. Nee." He said, "He can fix it." He just said, "Tiny Nee can do anything." And he probably could. I tell you what he did in the basement, the trades class built the house he and my grandmother lived in.
And that's one thing a lot of people don't. I don't even remember trades class, but that was evidently a curriculum they had back in the day.
They had it evidently because the school built the house, and this was in the 60s, and no TV at that time that I knew had a mute button. Now, his wasn't remote, but he had hooked up a line that went to an on-off switch, and we'd be watching Wagon Train in 1962, 3 or 4, and when the commercial came on, he couldn't stand all that, so he wouldn't have to get up. Now, at home, because we got to go up and go to the
Right.
TV. He would flip that switch,
Wow.
and he knew how to do that. He flipped that switch, and the
Wow.
picture would stay on, but the sound would go off.
Wow.
But Tiny D could do that as he shocked the dogs, and he could turn off the commercial.
If you could tell every Ripley football player one thing from your grandfather's legacy, what would it be?
Well, same thing. Play hard, but play the right way. Play as a team. Too much today, and he was never an individual player either. When he was playing at Wabash or Cumberland, and when he's coaching, I guarantee you, of course, I'm not in the locker room, and he's quit coaching before I'm born. I didn't hear him say any of these things. But he's going to tell the kids, we got to play as a unit. But again, play the right way. We got rules for a reason. Do what the rule says. He would never have crossed the line on that. People are stealing signs or want to film the other team or not swap films. No, Tiny D wasn't about that. He did it the right way. He coached and played the way we all know we ought to play. But it doesn't happen all the time. But he was brought up well. He had 6 brothers and sisters in Wabash, Indiana. But I guarantee you, every one of them was just like Tiny D.
Did you ever meet any of his family
I did.
from up there?
Well, I didn't go there. He had a brother that moved down to Watertown, Tennessee, Homer Knee, and he was really a good football player. But Tiny D was so much better, you didn't know how good Homer was. But I did meet him, but I never did go. I've never been, and I ought to go up there today. I bet his name still floats the halls of Wabash College. They've had some events, and I regret not going. But the biggest regret is, Mike, that here's Tiny D, and I'm uncovering all this wealth of greatness that was sitting right there at my doorstep, and we're unwrapping Christmas presents and eating birthday cake, and you're doing what a child would do. But now I'm learning, and wished I had hundreds of questions asked him. Now I don't know how much he would have said about it. See,
Right.
Tiny D wouldn't tell us. So, he ran in the Drake relays and the Penn relays. I'd like to ask him, how was that experience? He rode on a train with Newt Rockney to go to a track meet in Chicago.
He rode on the Wabash Cannonball, didn't he?
Rode the Wabash Cannonball to go to college. But I'm thinking, what'd you say to Newt Rockney? Well,
Right.
What did they slept in the same berth, I think, to go in, because Wabash didn't send anybody to the track meet, and I think Newt Rockney that year went as a spectator or coach and didn't have a player maybe, but they hooked up and went together.
Wow.
So yeah, so many thoughts, and when I tell people today, if you've got somebody special and you've been putting off calling them or going to see them,
100%.
you better go on and do it. We're not
Not guaranteed the rest of the day, let alone tomorrow.
We're not.
Was he competitive outside of sports? Like in his personal life? Did he have that? Was he that way, or did he just focus that on sports?
You're right. If he did, you did. But his competitiveness was not going to be something that's going to put you down. So I don't know that. I'm sure he was. He wanted to win, but he sure wasn't going to push you out of the way to tell you about it or to.
Yeah, it wasn't about him.
That's right. It never was about Tiny D.
Let me ask you a couple of final questions, and then if there's something that you want to add that we haven't covered, we'll look at that. Of course, next year will be the 100th year anniversary of football in Ripley, and I hope that we do some kind of celebration like Haywood did.
Well, see, I'm glad you reckon. See, there are not many people that recognize. See, Covington, their field was put in 1921.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in 2021, I told them about. I don't think they did a thing.
I don't think they did either.
So I'm glad.
Hall's the same way, wasn't it?
Yeah, and if Hall's, I think, was 1924.
Okay.
They shortly after, but I don't know if they did anything.
Now
we did. Well, we celebrated not the field. We celebrated football. We've gone here from 1912 solid without missing a year of football, and we recognize that. But so many towns, Mike, you're right. I'm just glad that Ripley realizes that one place of playing football is really that's the only place y'all played football. We played 4 places here. You relate to our Memorial Field here, the John B. Hooper Stadium. We've only played there since 1949, so it's really a modern day field. We played 3 places before that, but Ripley, 1 place. Yeah, y'all need to start now. What are you going to do?
I tried to start last year, and hopefully we can push that along.
But you got to get some people.
Yeah, and it takes a while. You know better than anybody how long it takes to
tell Craig Fitzhugh, let's go. Come on.
We definitely need to get that going. And I think I've kind of covered this just a little bit, but if there's anything you want to add to it, the football players or people when they leave Tiny Stadium after watching a game. Is there anything particular you hope they remember about the name of the man whose name is on the entrance?
Yeah, I hope they realize just what we've defined a little bit is, of course, what I think about is, again, the people that drive by from out of town. The people in town should know, but a lot of people, well, and again, if you're a newcomer the last 45 years, you never knew the man because he wasn't living. You didn't know the significance of how great a person he was. But he was bigger than sports, see. I wasn't in classrooms with him, but I can imagine if you were in Ripley High School during his teaching days, you wanted him as a class. You would not only learn something, but you would get loved and cared for.
Probably have a little fun too.
Yeah, he was going to be some fun too.
Yeah.
I think no doubt about that, Mike. But yeah, leaving the field just knowing that there's a human being behind that strange name, and it's a real person that is one of the best people I've ever known.
And, I think it's kind of unique that every school, Covington, Halls, Haywood, somebody started the program. But as far as I know, nobody knows who started the program at any of these other schools except Tiny and Ripley.
That's right.
I mean, that's my perception.
Yeah, you're right. There's a good legacy, and you've got, I do, and you've seen it, a good biography on Tiny D. You know who he was, where he came from. But it is odd. A lot of people, like Ed Thompson, came to Brownville coach, and he never left. Well, Tiny D came to Ripley. He had roots in Indiana. I don't remember him ever going back. I guess he did, but from 1927 till the day he died, for 60 years there almost, he was a Ripley guy.
Ripley man, yeah.
It's hard, and I don't know that I put it in words well enough.
Well, a lot more than of course you have more information than any other living individual about Tiny D, and for people who may not be aware, of course, we're sitting in your office, and it's more of a sports history office more than it is.
Well, I know I've got all this stuff, got records. I've got every Tomcat game that we've played chronicled here, and a lot of Ripley stuff. I tell you, one of the coolest things too in our sports room here. It really doesn't have a direct connection to Brownsville, but there was a sporting goods place in Mayfield, Kentucky that a lot of the Big Ten people would buy sporting goods from. And Tiny D had gotten to be such big buddies with. This guy gave him a set, I assume, of glasses. I've got one remaining glass, and I put it in our museum. And it doesn't have anything to do with Haywood County, but it was sent to the football coach in Ripley, and I put it in our museum.
Oh, nice.
I've got that there. But yeah, Tiny D made a difference. When he came to Ripley, he made a difference for Ripley. He's not a native Ripleyan, but he became one. Died in the war, purple and white tiger, and made a difference. Yeah, to me, if there's a mascot for Ripley, if there's a chamber ambassador, if there's a person to look up to in Ripley, it'd be all 5'9" Tiny D. Irvin Tiny D. Proud to be his grandson, I guarantee you that.
I am happy that you are willing to take your time to give us some history on Tiny D and Tiny D Stadium. Again, we're building a new stadium this year, and next year will be the 100th year anniversary. So I thought this would be an ideal time to get some history out there, and before things completely change. And that's what I told TigerTV. I was like, if we're going to get information with me and Robert, we need to do it sooner than later because we ain't going to be here forever.
See, I think about that. I've already outlived my grandfather 6 years. And I'm thinking, oh, you think when he died he was old. And I think, what am I? But yeah, I'm 6 years past his death date already. He died, had a massive heart attack. I guess he was a little overweight. And he ate, in the 60s, we ate what we like. He ate everything.
Country food.
Yeah, the greasy, whatever you're supposed to eat, he'd eat it. I tell you something else, too, I thought about. We went down and there was a restaurant, I'm not sure the name of it, on Main Street. And I'd never, as a kid, I was just a kid, we went in to eat. And he said, well, do you want a salad? My grandfather, do you want a salad? Well, I don't know. I never had a salad. I don't know what a salad is, but I got a salad. And I think in those days, you didn't have ranch dressing or blue cheese, or certainly didn't have honey mustard.
Right.
Well, I didn't know. I said, well, what is the dressing? So I think I used French dressing, which today I wouldn't dare touch it. But I hadn't thought about that. The first salad I ever ate was with him. Somebody, it was just the two of us. And we ate at this place on the right-hand side going up 51. Okay. I don't know what the name of it is. Of course, been gone. But, yeah, he said, do you want a salad? And I said, okay. What is that? But, yeah, I treasured some moments that I had with him. Spent the night over there many a night. And we did things together. But riding in that Jeep, and Danny Beard had it for a long time and restored it. And, of course, you just can't keep things like that going forever.
Right.
But that was a special memento. If you know what the United States Army drove in World War II, a Willis Jeep, it was painted green with red in the right places, and that's his marquee.
And it sit in front of the TKS building around
right.
change, inside of change for decades.
That's right.
I think it was there when I was in high school.
That's right.
Well, Robert, again, we really appreciate your time. You've been very kind with your time and sharing this information about your granddad and the namesake, Tiny Knee Stadium. And, it's going to go on. The Tiny Knee Stadium has already gone past him. It's going to go past us, and it'll go into the future. And I'm glad to see that somebody, had that foresight 100 years ago to do something that's going to last a couple of hundred years or as long as the country stands, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, I thank you, Mike, and Steve Vickery for making this possible, and run with it, put it out there, and inform people. This is just an educational time to put together, and it maybe enlighten folks a little bit more about who this guy was and what he did and why he did it.
And then maybe we may come up with some more questions in the future that we may want to do this again.
Right.
Obviously, if people have specific questions, they can reach out either one, and we'll try to answer what we can. But we definitely want to make note of Tiny Knee here, because this is the man we've been talking about all day, and one of a kind in Ripley, and the one who started everything as far as baseball or football and track, and so we definitely want to take our hats off to him and to his grandson Robert for being with us and helping us today.
And I would see him in a coat and tie, but not much. That's not his look. Now he would look there at this, and he went to Ripley Presbyterian Church, and he'd do that. That's when my mom married, and they were in that church every Sunday. But no, that's a special occasion right here, because he'd always just be in his work clothes and just go, be a T-shirt on. He didn't care what he looked like, My grandmother would say, now, Tiny, do this. He had his own way of doing things, but it was the right way. I guarantee you that.
Again, we sure appreciate it, Robert. Thanks again for your time, and we'll be keeping an eye on Tiny Knee Stadium and keeping you up to date on things that are going on, and we'll catch you somewhere down the road.
That's right. Go Tigers! I mean, I still am a purple and white guy. We're both ways, and I'm a Tomcat fan. But I always look over my shoulder, and I want to know what Ripley does, and I pull for them. We're not in the same classification, so 3A football. I know you got an uphill battle with the Covingtons and Westviews and Dyersburgs, but beat them. That's what I say. Beat them.
I agree with you. Let's do it all the way this year.
That's right. I'm all for you.
All right. Yeah. Well, again, thanks again to Robert Rooks for being with us for this edition of Tiger TV.